Torah Or, Megillah Esther, page Sadik. First column, midway through the first column. Okay, now the Rebbe was explaining about these garments. What does it mean? Hashem puts on garments of grandeur. There was a horse, the crown, and he says that all the revelations that happened in Matan Torah happened at Purim, because Purim was the finalization and the willingness of acceptance of Matan Torah. So then the last thing that the Rebbe started explaining was that there's Torah and there's mitzvahs. And like it says, whoever learns with the intent of not keeping should have never been created. So he says there's the mile of Torah, that if somebody else could do the mitzvah, you don't stop learning Torah. But there's a mile of mitzvah that if nobody else could do the mitzvah, then you have to stop learning Torah to do the mitzvah. So Al Rabbi says like this, it's an interesting expression. V'nevayir ato, now we're going to explain in this Maamar, Ma'ila sheyesh b'kim ha-mitzvah sal divrei Torah. In this Maamar, Al Rabbi says we're going to, even though many places it explains the advantage of Torah over mitzvahs, but there's also an advantage of mitzvahs over Torah. It says now we're going to explain the advantage of mitzvahs over Torah. The Inyan is like this. The beginning of the worlds begin with Chachma. Chachma is the first level of each world. What does it mean, the level of Ishtalshlis? Is Keshalshelis, it could chain. Me'arba tabois. What is a chain? You have many golden links, one going into the next. So the same thing, Chachma bechinas Ishtalshlis. Chachma is the first link in the chain, Shemiman and Ishtalshla Midas. That from Chachma and Seichel comes Midas. So Chachma goes into Bina, the chain into Das, into Chesed, and so on. Therefore, Chachma, because it's a chain, so the higher link is connected to all the other links. So even in the Midas, Chachma, that's what it means by saying it's a chain. And now, how does Chachma get to a chain? It means, just like the higher link is still connected and the influence on the lower links, the same way the lower links have an impact on the higher links. So he says, Seichel comes into Midas, Midas comes into thought, into speech, into action. Even though Chachma is Yesh Mi'ayin, because Chachma is the first level of each level. So Chachma, there is no source of Chachma. Is the source of the rest of Ishtalshalis in Kolzeh. The fact that Chachma is called Reishis, the beginning, because when you say one, first, when you say first, by definition there is a second, a third, and a fourth. Because if there is no follow-up, then it's not first, it's the only one. That the first is also counted from the counting, therefore Avraham, we know, was Chesed. Yitzchak was Gvor Yaakov Teferes. Yet he's called Eved Ma. There's many Avraham, but after he changed his name, so Avraham is Eved Ma, switching the Mem and the Hey. Shubachinas Eved B'Techa Midas. That's a limb within the Midas. Therefore it says Chachma Ma'ayin Timotzi. Chachma comes from Me'ayin, but it's not Ayin. In other words, he's saying like this. Chachma is the first of all the Sfiras. It's the source of all the Sfiras. Nevertheless, it's still connected to the Sfiras. Chachma is, it says, Chachma Me'ayin Timotzi. Chachma comes from Ayin, but in essence it's not real nothing. Because it is Chachma, it's a spark. That spark is something that Bina comes from. You could light the whole world on fire with one spark. So that's the Chokhmah, but this still is connected. See, and that's the difference. Avram Avinu was Chesed, and Chokhmah Avraham. So he says that is Me'ayin Timotzi. But Moshe Rabbeinu shoyu bechinas nachnu ma is ayin mamish. All right, Avram Avinu came mei ayin, but Moshe Rabbeinu says nachnu ma, we are taking nothing. Why? And therefore kvad peh kvad loshen anechi. Therefore he was kvad peh. He was literally means heavy mouth and heavy tongue. That means he had a stutter basically. Kvad peh is the gabi Torah shebal peh, or kvad loshen Torah shebiksav, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't even speak Torah shebal peh, Torah shebal ksav, shaya madregas nishmose, because Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama was lachamayla bechinas haTorah, was even higher than Torah, because Torah is chachmase nafkis. Torah comes from chachma. He says like this: Chachma is not ultimate bittul. Chachma is yesh mi ayin. So it comes from ayin, but Chachma is still a level of yesh. Moshe Rabbeinu and Torah, which is Chachma shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, is that level of Chachma. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't come from bittul. He came from the Moshe Rabbeinu said, "V'nachnu ma," we are the level of bittul, because Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama came from a place higher than Torah. Therefore, he broke Torah to save the Jews. V'slabshus earn sabaruch shabbat comes from the level of Maamar Klam Geseder Ishtaushus. Okay. Therefore, it comes in Ishtaushus shemislabish bechinas alman b'chol elam l'fi madrigos. What is the Alter Rebbe is leading over here to the point? He said, in this Maamar we're going to explain the advantage of mitzvahs over Torah. So Alter Rebbe is explaining Torah comes is Chochmah Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the first level of world. Therefore, it's not ultimate nothing, because it is the first level of the world. Reishis means it's a beginning that's connected to Sheni, to Chochmah Bina, it's all connected. And he's going to explain, but mitzvahs, though, come from a higher level than Chochmah. He says, Aval ha'odes v'hamshachos earn sov baruch hu b'maisa mitzvahs gashmis. But mitzvahs that come from deal with gashmis, take a thing like truma maisris, hu b'chinas seviv kol almin, comes from the level of seviv kol almin, shalei b'derech hadraga v'ishtalshus, not in the level of chain, where there's chain interlink, it's all interlinked. But this is b'derech diluk. It means like this. To explain it in English. Torah is lechem, mozin, food for the neshamas in Gan Eden, and mitzvahs are the garments for the neshamas in Gan Eden. What the Rebbe explains this at the beginning of Tanya. So chokhmah, wisdom, you have to digest it, right? You have to, if you want to understand it, you have to chew it on, chew on it. You have to digest it. If you put food on your stomach, you're never going to get full. So Torah, which is called mozin, food, needs to be digest internally. You put food on your stomach, you're not going to get full. You have to internalize it. Torah needs to be internalized. Torah's level of chokhmah, it's the first sfira, the first attribute of the Ishtaushelus, so it's part of Ishtaushelus. Yes, it comes from Ma'ayin, but Chochmah is Yesh Mi'ayin, it is something. Then you have mitzvahs that are called garments. Okay, you don't internalize mitzvahs, you don't digest mitzvahs, you don't understand mitzvahs are action. Action comes from an encompassing level like garments. Therefore mitzvahs are called levushim. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe explains at the beginning of Tanya, in Perek Daled and then in Tehei, that the food of neshama, they come up to Gan Eden. Yeah, you also need food and drink and clothing, spiritual. So the Torah we learn down here is the food for the neshama Gan Eden. The mitzvahs we do down here are the garments of the neshama Gan Eden. But the advantage of mitzvahs over Torah is a level of chokhmah. That's the beginning of worlds. Mitzvahs, though, on the other hand, come from the level of Seviv Kolam, so mitzvahs are higher. Again, in this Maamar he says clearly, I'm explaining the advantage of mitzvahs over Torah. That's exactly what I just said. that yes, Talmud Torah can kulam, but there's an advantage of mitzvahs over Torah, and that's what he's explaining in this Maamar. Commissioner calls, so called the Dafik. It's the voice of my friend jumping. Medalig alahorim, why the fish ain't he? That does not melubebish mamish bidvarim gashmi. Shebehem nasa mitzvahs. Over there in Torah, it's not something that comes, I mean,
What does that mean, Rabbi?
no, I'm sorry. The mitzvahs, that revelation, godliness, doesn't actually internalize, like Chochmah internalizes in the brain. That level doesn't internalize into the mitzvahs, like Chochmah that comes into Midas and Machshava. It's only ha'ara ba'alma. It's only a ray. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain it in depth what it means. The Alter Rebbe is saying the advantage of mitzvahs over Torah is mamala kol almin, mitzvahs are seviv kol almin. Seviv kol almin is a higher level of elokus than mamala kol. That's why, by the way, interestingly, that the neshamas in Gan Eden learn Torah. There's Mesifta the Rakia, there's the yeshiva up there, right? Obviously, they don't learn the Gemara the way we learn it. They learn it in a spiritual sense. But they learn over there. But there's no mitzvahs in Gan Eden. They don't do mitzvahs in Gan Eden. It's too late already. Why? Gan Eden, like we said, they understand, they feel godliness permeate, ziva nenem ziva shechina. That's the level of mamala kol almin. Therefore, Torah, which is mamala kol almin, they can learn Torah in Gan Eden, on a higher level, obviously, than down here. But mitzvahs, which is the level of seviv kol almin, you can't do mitzvahs over there. Tshuva comes from even higher level. You can undo the past. That for sure doesn't exist in Gan Eden. Therefore, you got to do tshuva now, because once you go, it's too late.
Medalig alahorim means mitzvahs? That's what he's saying?
Yes. It jumps, meaning it's not permeating, it's jumping on it. The concept of Pesach. But Pesach is an interesting thing. Pesach is two contradictory things simultaneously. Pesach means jumping, yet Pesach is two words, Pesach, the mouth that talks. The Rabbi spoke many sichas. The concept of Pesach is learning Torah, is Pesach. But yet at the other end, the opposite side of it, Pesach is jumping. That's the definition of the word Pesach. Passing, pass over. It's not internalization. So over there, Pesach has both things together.
Mamala means a cave.
What?
Mamala means a cave.
Yes.
What is the cave on the Shama in Gan Eden?
The Torah and mitzvahs that it did.
The mitzvah comes to the Shama in Gan Eden as Mamala.
No, the mitzvahs is cited. The garments.
So what is the
Torah learning that you learned in this world. That's the kelim for the neshama to function in Gan Eden. But it's all from this world.
Without the Torah, we cannot do mitzvah.
Correct.
Why is Torah learning and jumping two opposites?
You ever hear the expression, jack of all trades, master of none? If you're going to jump around all over the place, how you can understand it? Understanding means you sit in one place and focus on the thing that you're learning. You can't jump around. It just doesn't, you can't. A mind that's jumping around all over the place can't learn.
Pesach doesn't mean jumping around, it means
That's jumping. Rashi and Chumash says the word Pesach means dilug. That's Rashi says the word Pesach means dilug, jumping. Hashem jumped over the level of, Hashem didn't go jumping jacks, It means Hashem revealed the Gilui of Seviv Kol Almin. Well, the Inyan is like this. Okay, now he's going to discuss the mile of mitzvahs over Torah. Kihim Isam Shachas Erin Sof, B'Seich Kol Almin. If Elokus coming in the world would only be derech his pashtus, his slavshus, Mamala Kol Almin. The Rebbe is explaining now, why do you need not only mamala, the permeating level, the ishtalshus of the worlds, but you must have seviv kol almin also. And he says like this, if Gamshach Alokus would only be Mamala Kolamin, Derech Eslapshus, Lahoyu Chelam Anivroim Liyas Ma'ayin Liyesh Klal. Then the problem is, because Ishtaushalis is, like it says, the links, so the highest link and the lowest link are connected. That means it's all cause and effect. Cause and effect is cause and effect, so it's a link, they're interconnected. That means the effect feels the cause. That's the definition. Yesh miyesh. The effect feels the cause. If the cause is alukus, then the effect would all feel alukus. So then everything would be bottled. You wouldn't have a world of dirim tachtenim. You wouldn't have a world of yesh miyayin. Because in mamalo kolam, everything feels each other. He says, it would be completely bottled. Like angels. Right? Angels come to the level of mamalo kolam. Even the level of chokhmah vatzilus that we learned in Pasach Liyah and the other Maamar in Torah Or. What does it mean in Atzilus? We say in Pasach Liyah we say, right? Antu chakim v'lei b'chokhmah yediyah. You are the level of chokhmah, which refers to chokhmah vatzilus. You are the level of chakim chokhmah, but now in a known form of chokhmah. And Alter Rebbe explains earlier in Torah Or that means that chokhmah vatzilus is the source of chokhmah. But the fact that it's the source of chokhmah, it connects it to chokhmah. But in direct connection, it's only the source of chokhmah. It is not chokhmah itself. That's what we say, antu chakim, but v'lei b'chokhmah yediyah. Not in a tangible level of chokhmah, like there is in B'riya, Yitzir, and Asiyah. It's the source of it. But he's saying even chokhmah law, the fact that it's a source shows there's automatically a connection. And to take it even in a deeper level, so to speak. A flintstone, right, Surah Chalamish, is a source of fire. You rub it, it's going to make fire. Now there's no tangible fire in there. It's cold, you touch it, you don't burn your hands. It could be in water for 100 years. You take it out, you rub it together, it's going to create a spark. It's going to create fire. But that fire, so this Surah Chalamish is a source for fire. Correct? But it's not a direct source of fire. Like this Sefer, I don't know, I imagine that if you rub two Sfarim together, you're not going to make fire. So that means Surah Chalamish is a source of fire. But it's not fire.
The potential doesn't have any koach in it?
Potential. Koach is not koach. That's exactly what you said. Potential means koach. Potential is not koach. What do you say? Chokhmah is the potential. There's no tangible chokhmah. There's no tangible fire in the Tzorah Chalamish. It's the source. But the fact that it's a source for it, and not a source of water, or a source of cholent, or this book is not a source, means that Tzorah Chalamish is a very refined source of fire. Chokhmah Vatzilus is not a tangible level of Chokhmah. But still, it's still a source. So therefore, Mikama Kema'acha Shinekar B'Shem Chokhmah, the Chokhmah Atzilus is only the potential source, right? The fact that it's called Chokhmah, Adi B'Chinas Dvar Ma, it's something, Ad She'ela B'Shem B'Fnei Atzmei. It would be, it has its own name. That means it has its own identity. It has its own persona. It is Chokhmah. That can't be from the level of Ein Sof, because anything finite, cannot be part of infinite. But it was part of its source. Like it's galus amidas b'seichel derech mashul, like the way midas are part of seichel, meaning like this. Before you have open midah, before you have an open emotion of love or fear, yeah, what's the source of love and fear? Seichel. Seichel reveals midas. By the way, it's not the actual source of it. There's midas without seichel. But what reveals the source of the revealed midah, what stimulates midah? Seichel. Therefore, kids, little babies, like little things, big babies, like big things. Right? Little kids like little cars, big kids like big cars. It's the same thing. They're just, that because that's based on seichel. So midas really, before you have the love, it's already there in seichel. When midas come from seichel, it's not yesh mi'ayin. The midah is there in the seichel. When the fire comes from the Torah Chalamish, it's not yesh mi'ayin. The stone is there. In the stone is the potential for fire. So it's just cause and effect. Midas are included in the seichel, because based on the seichel, that is your midah. A little kid wants little things, right? Because the seichel is minimal, immature. Immature seichel wants immature things. Mature seichel wants mature things. The more mature a seichel is, then they don't want gashmias. They want ruchnias. If it's more mature seichel, you understand, gashmias comes and goes. Gashmias is nothing.
Word of Tohu, there were no cause and effect. That's what
No. But he's not talking even about Torah. Torah is even higher up. Yeah. He's just saying mitzvahs come from a level above ishtalshalis. Not like seichel and midas. So he's saying seichel is something, even chokhmah is still something. It might not be as tangible as chokhmah of bria, but it's still the source of chokhmah, and therefore it's still called chokhmah. And therefore midas are based on the chokhmah. And therefore creation can't come from that level, because then you can't have creation of a yesh mi'ayin, that Hashem wants the world to feel like a yesh, to feel like it's something, and then the avodah is for the yesh to become ayin, meaning to become bottled to the source. But if there's no yesh mi'ayin, so then how are you going to have bittul? Or on the contrary, he says, if in ishtalshlus everything feels the source, so everything's going to be bottled telukus. And that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants that by nature it's not bottled telukus, and our avodah is to make it bottled telukus. That's the whole avodah of the Jew. And it's primarily done with mitzvahs, gashmias, the things, not Torah. Torah is chachma.
There is a source of Torah which is higher than.
There's a source of Torah which is higher than Chokhmah. And that's like we said, what the Medrash uses is expression, Shashui HaMelech Batzmusai. It's the king's toy that he plays with every day. Shamelech Mishtasheh B'Chol Yom, that the king plays with every day. Meaning, that's a level of above Seichel, it's enjoyment. But then you have something like Moshe Rabbeinu's Neshama, which is even higher than Torah.
What's the connection between the source of Chokhmah and Chokhmah? What's the connection between the source of Torah and Torah? There is a connection, obviously.
There is. But you can have different levels of source. You have a barbecue, yeah? So sometimes the coals are, they're burning hot, but you don't see open fire. Right? Okay, so the coals are burning. Now, or the blacksmith and the goldsmith, okay, you have the fire. Then you have the bellows. What do the bellows do? it blows air on the coals or whatever, and then it ignites. It becomes a big fire. Now, the source of that fire are those coals. Correct? But if you touch the coals, you're going to get burnt, big time. So that is also a source for fire. But that is a source that's much more connected to the fire than the tzura chalamish, that when you touch it, it's cold. And that's also a source for fire. So you can have different levels of source. That's what Chassidus explains, Esosphere, Sagnudus, Kayachayuli, all these things, the Tzamach Vavs and the Ayin Bezes and all that. But you have different sources. You have a more tangible source, and then you have a more remote source. But it's still a source. Tzura Chalamish is a source of fire, not of cholent. And therefore, it's connected to fire. But not in a tangible way like coals. Okay? And then you can take it even more. Take a match, and you strike it, you get a fire. Your match, you have to strike much less than you do at Tzura Chalamish. Correct? A match is also a source of fire. Now the match is not hot. Before you strike it, right? But the match is a source of fire. But fire comes easier out of a match than it does from a Tzura Chalamish. That's why we have something called lighters and matches today. We don't go around with Tzura Chalamishes. You want to smoke a cigarette, you take two, you will carry around in your pocket 2 Flintstones, and you light them, you know what I mean? So what's a closer source? A match is a closer source. But it's still not like the coals, which are burning hot. So there's different levels of sources. By the way, that all represents the different levels of Sfiras up there, which are the source of world, but there's a direct source, indirect source, indirect source, you know what I mean? Which, by the way, brings out, when you understand that, like the Tzura Chalamish is the source of fire, but in an intangible way, that brings out the greater power of Tzura Chalamish over coals. In other words, it's removed from the aspect of fire that you can touch it, it's not hot. But it could still be a source of fire. So when you speak about Elokus, that there's a source and a source and a source and a source, so you go all the way up there, so you understand the way Hashem has nothing to do with worlds. So actually, technically, Tzura Chalamish has nothing to do with fire. If you see a Tzura Chalamish, you don't see any fire. There's nothing to do with it. But still a potential of fire. Now I want to conclude. If you think I know what I'm talking about, got a big mistake.